December 7, 1944. 700 hours, the waters off Ormoc, western Leyte. The air inside the landing craft reeks of diesel fumes and nervous sweat. The humidity is already climbing, sticking the olive drab wool uniforms to the skin of the men inside. But these aren't the fresh-faced, 18-year-old draftees typical of the newsreels. These men look different. They are older, heavier. Their faces are lined with the grit of civilian lives left behind in New York City, cab drivers, dock workers, mechanics. They are the 77th Infantry Division. They call themselves the Old Bastards. And on this morning, the 3rd anniversary of Pearl Harbor, they are about to kick open the back door of the Japanese Empire. General Andrew Bruce has ordered a risky maneuver, an amphibious end run behind Japanese lines. For weeks, the battle for Leyte has been a muddy, bloody stalemate in the north. The Japanese are pouring reinforcements into the port of Ormoc, turning the island into a fortress. To stop it, the 77th has to land right in the enemy's backyard, seize the port, and choke off the supply line. As the ramp drops into the surf of Ormoc Bay, there is no grand cinematic charge. There is only the heavy slog through wet sand, the bark of NCOs, and the immediate, suffocating realization that they are surrounded. By nightfall on December 10th, the 77th has secured a fragile perimeter. They are dug in, but they are exposed. Intelligence reports are coming in over the wire, frantic and precise. The Japanese are not giving up. A massive reinforcement convoy, Operation Ta-9, is steaming toward Ormoc Bay under the cover of darkness. They are bringing thousands of fresh troops, ammunition, and supplies to push the Americans back into the sea. On the shoreline, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Kimbrell of the 706th Tank Destroyer Battalion studies the dark horizon. He doesn't have coastal artillery. He doesn't have a battleship parked offshore for support. What he has are M10 Tank Destroyers. Open-topped, lightly armored, and designed to hunt German panzers in the hedgerows of France, not fight naval battles in the Pacific. Kimbrell looks at his crews. These men are tired. They fought through the jungles of Guam. They know the math. An M10's 3-inch gun is devastating against steel plate, but against a moving ship at night, it's a shot in the dark. Get them hull down, Kimbrell orders. Watch the water. The old bastards check their breeches and settle into the sand. The sun dips below the horizon, turning the bay into a wall of black ink. The jungle behind them is alive with sniper fire, but the real threat is out there on the water, closing in at 12 knots. The stage is set for one of the strangest, most lopsided engagements of World War II. December 10th, 1944, 2300 hours, the darkness of Ormoc Bay. The silence along the beach is heavy, broken only by the lap of water against the black sand and the occasional distant crack of a Japanese Arisaka rifle in the jungle perimeter. Lieutenant Colonel Kimbrell moves down the line of his M10s. In the European theater, these machines are hunters, using speed and terrain to flank German armor. Here, on a narrow strip of Philippine beach, they are stationary pillboxes. The crews have dug them in deep. The angled armor of the hulls is buried in sand berms, leaving only the turrets exposed. They are hull down, a tanker's term for making yourself small. But an M10 has a fatal flaw for close quarters infantry fighting. It has no roof. The turret is open to the sky. A single well-thrown grenade or a mortar shell air bursting above them would turn the fighting compartment into a slaughterhouse. The men inside, New York transit workers, shopkeepers, fathers, sit in the humid dark, sweating over the breech blocks of their 3-inch guns. They load armor-piercing shells, the heavy clank hiss of the breech closing echoing softly in the metal hull. They wait. For the 77th Division, patience is a weapon. Younger troops might twitch at every shadow, firing blindly into the night and giving away their position. But the old bastards have lived long enough to know that fear is just another thing to manage, like a mortgage or a breakdown on the Brooklyn Bridge. They hold their fire. They wait for the target to reveal itself. 30 hours, December 11th. A sound drifts across the water, low, rhythmic thrumming. It isn't the wind. It is the unmistakable drone of heavy marine diesel engines. Kimbrel raises his binoculars, straining against the gloom. At first, there is nothing but the void of the ocean. Then the moon breaks through a gap in the cloud cover, casting a pale, silver ribbon across the bay. And there they are. Silhouetted against the faint light, a ghost flotilla emerges. Not one ship, but 5. Japanese transports and destroyers sitting low in the water, heavy with troops and equipment. They are dangerously close, less than 1,000 yards out. They are moving with the confidence of a navy that believes it owns the night. The Japanese commanders on the bridge of the lead vessel, the destroyer Yuzuki, peer at the shore. They see nothing but the dark outline of palm trees. They believe the Americans are pinned down inland. They are preparing to drop anchor, to open their hatches and unleash a flood of reinforcements that could break the 77th hold on the island. On the beach, the American gunners make micro-adjustments to their traversing wheels. The long barrels of the M10s track the leading ship. A sergeant in the lead tank destroyer whispers into his headset. Target acquired, range 800 yards, speed 12 knots. The distance is point-blank for a high-velocity anti-tank gun. A miss is impossible, but if they fire too soon, the trailing ships might turn and run. If they wait too long, the Japanese destroyers will bring their 5-inch naval guns to bear, vaporizing the M10s where they sit. Kimbrel holds his breath. He watches the lead ship slow, its wake settling as it prepares to unload. The trap is primed. The enemy is in the kill zone. And the old bastards are ready to close the door. Fire! The command rips through the humidity, instantly drowned out by a concussive roar. Simultaneously, the shoreline erupts. The muzzle flashes of the M10s tear holes in the darkness, momentarily blinding the gunners. The 3-inch anti-tank guns, designed to punch through the thick steel of German panzers, send 15-pound armor-piercing shells screaming across the water at 2,600 feet per second. At 800 yards, the flight time is less than a heartbeat. The lead Japanese transport doesn't just take a hit. It shudders violently as multiple rounds slam into its hull just above the waterline. There is no armor on a troop transport to stop a high-velocity tank round. The shells pass straight through the plating, smashing engines, rupturing fuel lines, and detonating ammunition stores deep inside the hold. On the beach, the rhythm of the old bastards takes over. This isn't the frantic panic of green troops. This is a job. Load breech close, fire recoil, eject, load. Inside the open turrets, the loaders are working like machines, sweat slicking their bare chests as they heave shells into the breeches. The gunners aren't aiming at vague shapes. They are dissecting the ships. They target the water lines to flood them. They target the superstructures to kill the command. They target the sterns to disable the screws. Out on the bay, chaos reigns. The Japanese captains, stunned by the ferocity of the ambush, try to maneuver. But the bay is narrow, and the water is churning with explosions. The destroyer Yuzuki attempts to bring its guns to bear, firing star shells to illuminate the beach. The flares pop and hiss overhead, bathing the M10s in an eerie, wavering light. But the Americans are dug in too deep. The Japanese return fire flies high, tearing harmlessly into the palm groves behind the beach. It is a massacre of physics. A tank destroyer is a sniper rifle. A naval gun is a shotgun. In the close confines of Ormoc Bay, precision wins. One transport, engulfed in flames, begins to list heavily to starboard. Soldiers on its deck leap into the black, oil-slicked water. Another ship, its boiler hit, erupts in a column of steam and fire that lights up the faces of the Americans on the shore. The noise is deafening, a continuous, rolling thunder of high-explosive impacts and secondary detonations. Then, Lieutenant Colonel Kimbrel checks his watch. It has been 18 minutes since the first shot was fired. He looks out at the bay. The churning silhouettes are gone. In their place are burning pyres, sinking rapidly beneath the surface. The screech of tearing metal and the hiss of steam dying in the ocean fills the air. The M10 crews cease fire. The breeches smoke in the night air. The sand around the tracks is littered with brass casings, shining gold in the light of the burning enemy. Ships. 5 vessels entered the bay. 5 vessels are currently settling on the bottom of it. The old bastards wipe the grease from their hands and look at one another. They haven't just repelled an attack, they have rewritten the tactical manual. They have sunk a navy from the beach, and not a single American soldier has been scratched. December 11th, 1944, 100 hours. The silence returns to Ormoc Bay as quickly as it left. The only sound remaining is the crackle of burning debris floating on the surface and the distant cries of survivors in the water. The bay, moments ago a cauldron of fire and steel, is now a graveyard. Lieutenant Colonel Kimbrell lowers his binoculars. He scans his line. He expects damage reports. He expects calls for medics. He waits for the frantic radio chatter that usually follows a firefight of this magnitude. Instead, there is only the murmur of crews reloading. Casualties? Kimbrell asks the nearest sergeant. The sergeant shakes his head, looking. Almost confused. None, sir, not a scratch. It defies the logic of warfare. In 18 minutes, a handful of open-top tank destroyers, vehicles designed to hunt armor in European forests, have annihilated a naval task force. They have sunk the destroyers Yuzuki and Yuzuki, along with 3 transports laden with troops and supplies. Official U.S. Army records would later confirm the impossible. The 77th Infantry Division had stopped the Japanese reinforcement of Leyte cold, without suffering a single casualty in the exchange. This was the end of Operation TA-9. The back door to Leyte was slammed shut, bolted, and welded tight by the men of the 77th. The Japanese High Command, realizing they could no longer safely run convoys into Ormoc, effectively ceded the island. The old bastards didn't celebrate. There were no speeches. They simply covered their britches, cleaned their optics, and went back to waiting in the dark. To them, it wasn't a miracle. It was a job. They were the mechanics, the cab drivers, the shopkeepers of New York. They understood the value of doing things right the first time. They understood leverage. They understood patience. History has largely forgotten the night of December 11th. It doesn't have the cinematic grandeur of D-Day or the flag raising on Iwo Jima. It is a footnote in the sprawling chronicle of the Pacific War. But in the military academies, in the dusty after-action reports, the record remains. It stands as the only confirmed instance in World War II, where a naval force was destroyed solely by armored vehicles firing from the shore. It is a testament to the fact that wars are not always won by the youngest soldiers or the most advanced technology. Sometimes, they are won by old bastards who know how to sit still, wait for the right moment, and don't miss when it counts. The sun rises over Ormoc Bay a few hours later. The water is calm. The wrecks are gone, swallowed by the deep. The 77th Infantry Division packs up its gear. There is still a war to win, and they are just the men to finish it.